Check. Look, only 4 minutes behind schedule. Are we live streaming up there, sir? Yes, we got a thumbs up. We still have people coming in online. We were just making sure that we had as many people online as we have. They'll still continue to come in. We are at a quorum. We do have our 75% in attendance right now between you guys here and the people that are online. So we can proceed with the meeting, and so I'll call this meeting to order. So let me pray, and then we'll cover some logistics. Our gracious Father, it's amazing to be here today, to be thinking about moving forward with a way to continue ministry in this valley through providing housing for staff members down the road as we look at growing this place, growing this church, and meeting the needs in this valley. Father, more than anything today, we pray that you would be gracious to us, that we will listen to your Spirit, and that your will be done today. Father, I thank you for this opportunity. I pray for our hearts today. Let us be gracious. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, just a couple logistics. This is for people online and for you here. If you feel like you have enough information to vote already, you are free to go ahead and vote and put your vote in the ballot box in the back. And so basically, we're going to run through a presentation today. But if you feel like you've got enough information as of right now, you're welcome to go ahead and cast and go. It's not a long presentation, but we have a lot of different things to give to you today. We feel like we've done a pretty heavy lift with our due diligence to get here today. And so I thank you for being here today. I'm humbled to be before you today. I'm just glad to still be here after the year I've had. I'm serious about that. It has not been an easy year. But thank you for your prayers. I appreciate for praying for me and for God taking care of me and having me be here today. So anyway, without any further ado, we will continue with the presentation. So here we go.
My name is Sarah Winholtz, and I am an owner of Crystal Property Management and Sales Co., which is located in Glenwood Springs. We've been a business since 1990. My husband and I purchased in 2007. So we focus primarily on residential property management, commercial property management, homeowner association management, and then also sales. So we have been a long-term family-owned property management company in the Valley. I myself currently, I am the president-elect for the Glenwood Springs Board of Realtors. I am a president of the Colorado Housing Coalition, which is an advocacy group for property rights at the state level.
You guys manage how many properties?
We have about 350 residential properties. We have a handful of commercial properties and then about 35 homeowner associations. So the Roaring Fork Valley, particularly Glenwood Springs, continues to experience a very steady housing demand because we still continue to have limited inventory. So although our price growth has really moderated slightly from our pandemic highs, the market is really still very strong due to demands on workforce housing shortages in our area. We have very limited developmental land that is available to build a development on. And we have consistent migration from the Front Range and from other areas headed in here. So that really puts upward pressure on our rental rates, have continued to remain high, especially for properties that are well located or they're updated.
What do you see as trends moving forward, say in the next years?
Ultimately, Glenwood is interesting because we're in a valley, and so we cannot build out of a shortage of available inventory. To some degree, it is what it is. That particular property is a little bit of a gem because it has an ADU. ADU expectations and zoning has continually modified, but with it being official ADU, that gives a lot of additional uses out of that property. I would also say that another top attribute for this particular location is not only the location, but that it's not in a homeowner association. We are really seeing upward pressure on dues and increase that is coming from items such as either maintenance that hasn't been addressed or is just rising in cost, but more importantly, insurance. So to be outside of a homeowner association is a real high attribute for this property itself, as well as it's in a neighborhood that has parking on the street. That is not as common as you would think, especially after you get out of kind of the downtown area. That's very rare to have guest parking and or parking on the street.
How about the location being close to the hospital? Does that matter, being close to the hospital?
I think in general that adds to the curb appeal, specifically because you can market if you were to rent any portion of this property, that's ideally located, obviously. And I think across the board that will bode well for those who want to live and work within our community. I think the only drawback that is typical for a home in Glenwood Springs is based on the age. You do have some additional disclosures that are required. So this particular property was built in 1968 per the assessor's website. And so what that will require is, as I'm aware, you have obtained an asbestos test. So that is going to require that that is disclosed before someone were to apply if you choose to rent this, and or maybe a staff member, that you do go ahead and you disclose that a report was completed, provide the report so that before you take any fees for applications, they're aware of that, as well as disclose whether or not lead-based paint testing has been done. And ultimately, really the only obligation there is to provide a pamphlet and or if you did test, the testing results. And it's a federal pamphlet, which basically outlines that the dangers of ingesting lead-based paint.
Okay. And you, with the homes that you have, you've rented out houses that are in that same age range, same kind of, how do those disclosures work? And in the sense of how does that impact its rentability?
In Glenwood Springs, a majority of the housing inventory is within the age ranges where there is a disclosure for lead-based paint and there is a disclosure for asbestos. So this is very common and should really be included across the board. I think overall assessment is that based on the price point of this property and what it's being offered to Mountain View, to me, it is very difficult to find a property of this location and this layout to be able to have it where it could fit a lot of different needs is relatively rare. And so from my perspective of property management, this does offer, if this is the goal of the church, this particular property does offer a lot of flexibility to either be used as staff housing, workforce housing, and or just as a blessing to our community.
Okay, my portion of this is to talk through some staff housing scenarios, so this is decently long. The other sections won't be as long as this, but I thought it's probably fair and helpful to kind of get a sense of what could be, again, with the caveat, these are not guarantees, but projections. So let's begin with this. You can hit the next slide. Yes, okay. Here's a snapshot of our leadership flow. MVC is an elder-led church. I'm a pastor, one of the elders, and as lead pastor, my responsibility is to lead the MVC staff. Here's our current staff tree, you can see right there. Diana's position as Student and Family Ministries Director was added first for a number of reasons. Let me help kind of lay that out. Because of our current large age demographic is families with young kids, Diana has helped us firm up our ministry to not just kids, but parents as well, which is key to long-term healthy student discipleship, a ministry that also considers the family as a whole. So one of Diana's first objectives has been to meet with each family individually so we can hear from them rather than spinning up a bunch of programs that actually don't hit. Found that not to be helpful. to meet with each family and assess what's winning at home for discipleship that as a church we can build on and help reinforce. This is also why you're seeing things like the parent seminar last Saturday or Sunday. Great content, well attended. The goal is for parents to have space and support to encourage one another in their God-given role as faith nurturers. Diana has also helped us firm up our ministry to kids infancy to 12. That's as strong as any church I've ever worked in this year as compared to last. We no longer scramble for children's ministry volunteers like we have in the years past. That's been a big win. The next stage is to help begin to develop middle and high school ministry, which utilizes partnerships in the Valley and volunteer resources as well. So Lord willing, our next hire will be a youth director focused on middle and high school under the coordination of Diana in her role. And we already see an initial example of this, next slide. In our leadership fellow, Stuart, our MVC fellow, who's under Diana's lead, is currently working in student ministry. He serves as a regular jump school leader on Sundays, is helping a veteran youth volunteer like Ron, for example, in this bike outing in Grass Mesa 2 weeks ago. And Stuart is set to mentor 2 of our high school boys beginning now, which is all good. And that happened out of those conversations with parents, like, how can we come alongside of what you're doing? So this is a good test case of what can continue to grow and develop. Next semester, next slide, we're planning to position Stuart as a helper of YFC's new Wednesday night middle group, or school group, which has just begun. So another example of that synergy we're looking for. And so this is a good training year for Diana to develop in her role of delegation for the future, because Lord willing, youth director will add more hours, but to be able to place that person well, you need to have somebody in that space. And that helps because I worked this for 6 years in that, basically the person we're looking to hire, I was for 6 years. And so there's a notoriously high turnover rate in youth directors. About 18 months is the national average. Now we're looking for ways to extend that so we have more stability. But even when that happens and we're in between youth directors, it's important to have somebody stable in a multi-year commitment who's helping us continue to do ministry so we don't fall into the gaps and cracks all the time. So that was the wisdom behind her role first, then leading to a solid and supported next role. And that's why we're doing things like, I relocated because I needed seminary education. Now we offer that locally. So if a person was in our role as a youth director but looking to do extra biblical studies, we can offer that, keep them here. Also, something that causes youth directors to move on, in a rural community like ours, it's pretty isolating. And so through the fellowship program, we can offer more community to young adults, as well as our partnership with Grace. There's a weekly young adults group that Grace facilitates in Carbondale with our former fellow, Kaylin. So we're trying to set up that infrastructure so this person can stay longer. But part of that is cracking that code of like education, but also fellowship, because otherwise it's pretty isolating. So we're laying down that groundwork so we can have a better experience for a middle and high school director when we hire. That's the goal, long term. So next slide, let's look through some different scenarios. Again, these are not guarantees, but pretty likely scenarios of what could happen with this property. So youth director is hired who's early in their career, someone like Evan Petros, if that name helps. There'll be a guy because we're looking for gender balance right now. So in this scenario, likely be a team hire between MVC and Youth for Christ, which is a partnership that makes sense considering our many overlaps. So as part of compensation, MVC would put up the housing, which would be huge, and a small portion of salary. Youth for Christ would cover the rest. Zach and I, the director, have talked through this, so there's a pathway there. If the single person is a hire, it makes sense to likely house them in the ADU, with rental revenue from the other unit covering property costs for the whole house, taxes, insurance repairs, and potentially defraying the staff of compensation. That's sustainable hiring, which can weather a downturn. That kind of scenario is not unlikely. Could be, again, sustainable, advantageous. And in fact, we interviewed a Youth for Christ candidate last year, was also a fellow candidate. Didn't work out. But those are the kind of things that could be a real win. So let's consider one more scenario. So we hire, let's say, a man whose wife works at the hospital as a doctor, a PA, has experience in youth ministry, and his compensation, they'd very much like living in a house near the hospital. They got 1 or 2 kids. That main unit fits them well. In the same approach, staff compensation is largely in the housing offered. The rental revenue of the ADU would cover the property costs of the whole house, taxes, insurance, repairs, and defray staffing. So just to make that sense, like it's all coming from the same bucket. All our money is coming from the same bucket. We don't have like ROCA dollars that we use from their rent. It all comes from the same bucket. We're just trying to figure out how to create margins in a church that's pretty small, but at the same time wants staffing. We have to do a different formula. That's what we're trying to do, is the thought behind that. Last slide. So here's an estimated rental property income from both units, talking to Sarah. And this is conservative, that 4,200. So if you take out the costs, then you're looking at about a net of 40 grand. So phase one, again, these are projections, man, so let's work it together. But phase one, 18 to 24 months, rental revenue, both units helps to fund remodeling, upgrades, insurance, and property taxes. This property has been a rental for, I would say, a couple decades. Okay. So it is a rental house. It needs work to get to a place where you feel like you would like to live or put staff there. So we definitely could use those revenues toward that. So the remodeling would include electrical upgrades, roof repair, a lot of the stuff that's in the packet, as well as the deck needs redoing, the additional lighting, flooring, tree service. We'd walk through, Chris Lavin, Mike, definitely Sarah as well, and just kind of walk through what are the things that should be done now while there isn't a renter in it to get it ready for a January rent. That would be the thought. So, and then afterwards, the money going into the property to get it to a place where you can use it as a solid rental. Phase two, MVC staff in one unit, rental revenue from the other to cover, again, property taxes, insurance, defray staff compensation. Note on taxes, we have confirmed with the Converge accountant that we do not pay taxes on our income from a rental revenue. We do pay it on a property. We pay property taxes on the portion that is non-staff housing. So we've looked into that. That's all clear and helpful. Currently, that's the case with the parsonage. We're 100% staff, so we don't pay property tax or income tax. So, okay, so let me say this to sum up. Again, these are projections for staff moving forward. That appears to make fiscal sense, which also allows us to continue to develop ministry to students and families at a wise pace that can help us not have a drastic reduce in other areas of MVC's ministries, both local and abroad, in our budget, and without taking on mortgage debt. That's really what we're looking at. How do we add bandwidth without cutting into a bunch of things? Most of our costs are fixed. So that's the goal of the finance team as well. The employee cost of living in the valley has risen conservatively 20 to 25% in the past decade since I've lived here, for sure. It may continue to uptick. It may plateau out. If so, sustainable hire and retain staff locally. If our need for staff continues to increase, Lord willing, this property allows some flexible housing options to help us do so. When it's in the form of staff, housing compensation for staff or rental revenue to pay staff salaries, it all goes in the same direction. It comes from the same bucket. I can't see the future. I certainly didn't see COVID coming. I have no clue. And there may be various options about how staffing should look like. In every church I've worked at, there's lots of opinions on how staffing should work. I get that. But this I can say with confidence, our approach to ministry will continue to adapt to a changing community. That's the nature of strategic ministry. It's happened throughout the history of the church. Ministry may look different than in past eras, but the gospel will not change. So we thank you for considering that together. Before I sit down, I'd like to make some thanks first to Chris Lavin, who's listening online. As a professional builder, his work assessing the housing, putting together invoices, and lending his expertise, that really helped. I'd also like to thank Mike Fowler, George, who walked through a bunch of properties over the past months. And I also like to thank Mike. His willingness to come forward to offer to be the project leader for a potential remodel in this house, that's a big deal. I wouldn't want to do it otherwise. There's a good amount of work here. For this to happen, if it's okayed, a lot of people are putting on work belts and like raising to the bell when Mike rings it to say, shoulder to shoulder, we're doing some work, because it needs it to do it in an affordable way. So thank you, Mike. If this happens, yep, we appreciate that. So that eases my anxiety. Again, in a lot of ways I don't want this house. I definitely don't want it if it's me doing it. I'm not the guy for that, but could be a blessing. So anyways, I thought it was helpful to hear a couple of minutes from the owner of the house. Like, why did Jim decide to put this up to us at under market? So thank you.
Okay, I'm hoping that this goes through because of the middle school presentation that you put up there for Campus Life Middle School. I don't know how much longer I can eat pudding out of a diaper. So, yeah, it'd be nice to get some youthful exuberance into that one. It's amazing how many things have happened in my life sitting in these blue chairs. And I didn't think that was going to hit me. Anyway, and you know, you listen to the vision of the housing project, and I participate in the parsonage grant, or the what do you call that? The legacy project, and I sit there and I listen to the plan. I think it's a good idea. I really believe in parsonages or staff housing. If it wasn't for what we have now, I wouldn't have met Jeff and Beth. I wouldn't have started reading my Bible 19 years ago, which is a crazy thing when you think about it. I was invited to. It was the first time I ever prayed out loud. Was in that house, and I just remember being like white, because you can't even believe what's like coming out of your mouth. So I believe in the purpose of this property. As far as sitting in the blue chair and listening to the goals of what's going on, I would just sit there and be like, I know what they're looking for. They're looking for the same house like I have, one like I have. That'd be great. And just couldn't find it. And then I remember Steve one time at the meeting that we had in the back there. He's like, it'd be great if there was like something with an ADU. And I'm like, okay, God, are you going to describe this exactly? You know, like maybe something with a little bit of brick, you know, I don't know. And it's funny how this property came into our possession, not looking for a property, and Micah's brother TJ, just really trying to make it work in real estate, called and said, hey, I think I got a great property for you guys. And we weren't even really looking then, but we made it work. And I remember a year or so after we purchased the property, I was at a graduation party, and a realtor came up to me, and she said, man, you guys got like the steal of the valley. I'm like, I know, I couldn't believe it. So I've just been blessed with it, and I sit there and think about the needs, and it's not a great financial decision for me to, as far as financial decisions go, to offer it. It makes money every single month, and there's no pressure to hold on to it or wonder if it's going to work. It's great. In fact, that presentation that we had at the beginning from Crystal Property Management, I'm like, yeah, it's a great deal. Maybe I should vote no. But in reality, the Holy Spirit does things to each of us, and that's where I'm at. I talked a lot longer than I could have just said the Holy Spirit told me to.
All right, mine's going to be short. So real quick, just a little background. I am an engineer, civil engineer on the structural side. Been doing this for a while. I've looked at a lot of houses in the valley, from here up to Iron Bridge. Kind of know where the hot spots are in the valley, kind of know what to look for. So when we first looked at this house, there's certain signs that you look for on a structure. And this house did not exhibit any of those signs of structural deficiencies or any didn't cause any concern. So foundation looks really good. The roof looks good. No cracks in the drywall. No floors are all level. So from a structural standpoint, everything I think is thumbs up on this. If you read the inspection report, very, very, very thorough inspection report. So kudos to Steve for getting that done. I think the only thing that I saw was the deck, and that's pretty simple. So replace the deck, and we should be good to go. So that's my structural assessment. Like I said, short, sweet, has good bones. I think it's in really good shape.
Steve asked me to just speak to the affordability of whether it's available for the church. As you can see, currently we have liquid assets of a little under $1.5 million. That includes the legacy giving. It does not include, the value of the property here at the church or the parsonage, so there's a lot more there. And we have some expenses coming up. The HVAC needs to be replaced maybe this winter, but for sure next spring. We're estimating that to be around $160,000. We budgeted $800,000 for the house, which would include the first go-around of repairs and upgrades. And after that, after the total of the $960,000 in expenses, we pulled out 6 months of operating expenses. So that would be if we had another COVID come up and we fell short for 6 months, that would cover that, and that would leave us an additional balance of $312,000. So, can we afford the house? We almost can't afford not to buy the house, especially at this time. It's going to allow us to grow, to keep the youth coming to church, and that's it. That's all I got. Thanks.
I can't say enough how good it is to be part of this team. We have so much amazing people working with us and for us. So anyway, this is a point for where you can ask any question for clarification. So we will field questions now. Okay, the question is, where's the asbestos? Typical of a house like that, anything that was drywall mudded back in that time has asbestos in the mud. So any joint in that, I think there's some in the ceiling also, but it's all contained. It's all encapsulated at this point in time. So that's where we're at with asbestos. Okay, bring my structural engineer up here.
All right, so yeah, Mike is right. There is asbestos in the joint compound, which is used in the tape, taping the joints, mudding the joints. And there's also texture. So this was back when swirl was popular, and so there's swirl texture on the walls, and that was joint compound that was used for that. And there was asbestos in that, or there is. So Chris, to answer your question, that's all well, I don't know if I want to use the word encapsulated, but it's covered up by paint. So it's basically inert. If it's not airborne, there is no danger right now. It's not well, I think some of it tested to be friable, but as long as you're not cutting into it, demoing it, sanding it, scraping it, it's stable. It's encapsulated with paint right now. Yes, yeah. I mean, we did get some quotes for different abatements. There are 2 different types of abatements. There is a more of a chemical encapsulation, so it's another type of paint that can be applied, or another chemical that can be applied that encapsulates it further. Or there's removal. And so the removal would be that would be the full abatement. That's going to be someone coming in with Tyvek suit and demoing it and taking it out and disposing of it properly. Yeah, I mean, we know that it's there. As Sarah indicated, there's disclosures. Do we do it now? Do we do it later? What we do know is we wouldn't want to be doing abatement when someone's in there. So is it going to happen before someone moves in, or is it between tenants? That's something that we'll have to look at down the road.
Where'd Steve go? Here you go, Steve. It's the team approach.
Okay, if you want to show that slide again, those phases, that is what it is. So the first year and a half is just putting the money, and really, it's fair to say too, we don't know the exact upgrades that are needed till we own it. You got to walk through it. If you guys have bought a house, you know that to be true. So first level thing is walking through with Sarah, Mike, Chris Lavin, and saying what needs to be done here, what's first order stuff, what's next order stuff. Obviously all electrical stuff, all safety stuff. The house is dated, so there's like the bathroom needs to be remodeled. So that's a great crew to be able to say, for now in this phase, this needs to be done. That can be done later. This can be done outside, tree service, the deck, stuff like that can be done with renters in it too. Our goal is to get a renter in the main unit by January, and then to begin to produce revenue basically that we can put into remodeling. So we're not really dinging our budget. That would be difficult for the things that need to happen in a timely manner, so that especially as our demographic of kids gets bigger, we have to be ready for that. We get that. I 100% get that. We need middle and high school help and youth directing. It would be a youth director would be our next hire. Again, all that Lord willing. Like, I cannot see everything, but that would be our next priority. We're not looking to hire anybody else, like a hospice pastor or anything else like that. It's going to be for middle and high school, and hopefully to house them, because that wins for us. To live locally is so difficult. It's only going to get harder. And to be honest too, Mountain View Church's giving is about what it is, has been for a number of years, but inflation is taking place, as is cost of living. So we have to learn how to do more with less. That's what this is, longer term. So this is a 20-year play, 30-year play kind of thing, yeah? I would say within 18 to 24 months. Yeah, exactly. And in the interim, to continue to develop Diana in a role of utilizing whatever youth resources we have, which is Ron, for example. Like, he's a veteran youth worker. We need to use volunteers. The baby boomer generation was the best for volunteering and giving. We need to have people that help develop volunteers, because they don't naturally volunteer anymore. I'm not throwing any shade on millennials or Gen Zers. We have to be more thoughtful about that to continue to use volunteers, because as a church of our size, we need volunteers as well. We can't hire everything out. So 18 to 24 months would be my goal, but in that interim, to utilize both units as hard as we can to get all the upgrades done, so that that's a seamless transition. And again, depending on the person, if they already live locally, then we need to use that revenue to pay them. And if they don't live locally, it's a great site to live here and to work locally in a great space. So that's the goal, again. And we can show the slide. I mean, it lays it out, but that's the concept. Again, cannot guarantee, but that would be a fair estimation. So, yep, so the main units, yep, so the ADUs are currently rented. The main unit, the renters are out at the end of this month. So the timing of this is, the timing of this is very good. The ADU currently is being rented, but as a board, we would walk through, and really with Jim's recommendation, is this a good renter? Either way, Sarah and her property management company would oversee both rental units. Exactly, yep, that's true. And then it's not as advantageous to start in January. That's why we'd probably do a staggered 6-month lease with both renters and then get into a summer cycle. So, and a lot of this, again, would help because we've had experience, we brought a rental house that we own from where this one is to that. We used a lot of ROCA guys who are professionals who work with us. So we're blessed to have a lot of good resources, and Mike, Chris, Sarah, like a lot of things are aligning. I'm not going to drop the God card and say this is definitely God doing it. Could be, but at the same time, it's a strong place to even think about it with Jim bringing it forward. So a lot of this isn't even possible without that alignment. Seems good. Any other questions? Yeah. It's up there. It was on that slide as well. I think it's 4,000 per year, which again, standard when we had a property manager is 10%. She's giving it to us at 8, which is good. And they're super competent. They have 300 properties. Yeah, sure. Her help is invaluable, so we don't have to clog up a bunch of our time as leaders, as rental property lords, if that makes sense. When the staff is in it, that's a different thing. It's the same agreement they have with us. And so we wouldn't pay that property management fee on staff units, but definitely we want that for our rental revenue units, because that's a whole different kettle of fish. Yes? Yep. Yep, the proportion of, yep. Yeah, so that's a benefit of having staff in there, especially if they're both staff. That could possibly be happening as well. We'd love it. Again, this is contingent on Mountain View continuing to grow. I mean, what you saw up here with the little kids, that's good. It's actually possible because Diana takes some things off my plate so I can do youth sermons. That's why they didn't happen before. So this is a lot of division of labor. We're thinking through that stuff to make this the most ideal place. We all have the same goal, discipleship of youth, 100%. So we're thinking through the past experience and what we've learned through this to make this a tight thing that really works and creates a culture of discipleship. I think this is helpful to know too. As much as we can help parents learn discipleship, they're our future disciplers of people that don't have Christian parents. Sean Brown is mentoring Forrest Williams, who does not come from a Christian family, and part of that is his own experience as a parent discipling. So when we can create a culture of discipleship, it's much more effective long-term for student discipleship. So we're trying that, absolutely, 100%. This house just gives us options. I can't say how that looks. I mean, again, this is like way after I'm gone, and most of us are gone as well. We're thinking about what sets Mountain View Church up to be strong in this valley as a point of light when costs could get pretty crazy. It helps to have staffing, housing. So that's all that's all I know at this point. Anything else? Yes. Yep. Chris did a first hack at what are essential things, like safety things that need to be done. A lot of that will be dependent on how many volunteers we get. There's a ton of volunteer stuff that can happen, putting up fire doors, doing some roof work. I mean, there's a ton of things we can do, which would be more affordable. Working with Roca guys, also more affordable. And there's some things we just can't, we have HVAC, competency, plumbing. Mountain View's blessed with a lot of service providers. Some of that stuff we can't do ourselves, so we'll have to pay kind of top dollar on that. But the goal would be to do that first round and then fund the things that we need to continue to move forward in that 18 to 24 month. That's why I'm giving it a range. I'm not sure, but that's why it's $800,000. That's designated, not 765, is to give us some room there. But we can, without, and this would be Chris and Mike saying too, it's in rental shape pretty quick. Then it's working on the things around it and continue to pay for those out of rental revenue. We need to squeeze this asset for everything it has. I know that doesn't sound very churchly in some ways. The truth is we need to be good stewards, so that means utilizing and capturing all the rental revenue we can until it's ready for staff, and then seeing that as a big compensation and accounting for that, and not feeling bad that, can we offer more? It's just where we are at right now. So we're trying to right fit the church for the size of staff it needs, and that we can sustain it when there's a recession, so we're not laying off people like happened before. That's the reality. Yep. Here, yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. These units are going out. They're 25 years old, so we have a big cost, and that's the truth. That's why we're trying to do this, so it kind of exists in a sustainable way over here, so we can continue to do the things here. We just have an aging building, and that's a big part of our fixed cost is that. So just so people could hear, Jim did a ton of work when he got the house, sewer line, furnace, plumbing stuff, just so people can hear this. And so it's not like it's in horrible shape. It just needs more work. And some of the stuff is stylistic as well, but not unimportant, again. And we'd think that through with Sarah to say, for renters, what's the best bang for the buck in upgrades? So we would, take her advisement in that, and she has a good experience there. Anything else before? Yes, we got lots of questions. Yeah, so I put 4,200 as gross, and that's a conservative. Actually, Sarah puts it higher, but I just wanted to count for a winter start as opposed to a summer start, which should be about 10% more. So 4,200 is the gross for that. That's split. I mean, I didn't show you all the stuff, but like that would be split square footage. It's basically a 1/3 to 2/3 split on the ADU to the main unit, and the rent is commensurate with that. So for sure, that's split off. It depends on whether you're utilizing the ADU for staff house. That's better in some senses because you're capturing more rental revenue for upgrades, maintenance, but also to defray staff. So if it helps for us to think through that, like that is for staff, you can think that way. I mean, that helps. We don't partition it out like that, but that could go, if again, that helps, that could go all to staff compensation. We're gonna have a big kind of staff compensation thing. Staff's the most expensive part of our budget, as opposed to, utilities, insurance, whatnot. So we don't have a lot of cuttable stuff unless we start laying people off, or we cut into missions, to be honest. And we don't want to do that. I mean, that's a reason why we've right set some things to make this sustainable. So in the first year and a half, there's going to be some austerity for us, because that rental unit, all that income is going to the rental unit upgrading. It's not going to staff housing. When it flips into staff utilization, then that's actually helping our budget a good bit. So for this next season, it's gonna look like, we have a lot of assets, but actually in the fact of maintaining things and working towards sustainability. Once it becomes a staff unit, it's very advantageous for us. And the parsonage is a test case for that. It's easily 700 grand saved over the time, but it was a bite at first. Same thing's I think is gonna happen here. Anything else? I know we're trying to be timely. Roka is coming in as well, so. No, and there wouldn't be so no mortgage on this property that we're thinking to that's the whole goal here, is like debt is a killer to a church, adds extra stress to come into a debt scenario as well. So that was our goal, is to not get into any debt. And we don't have any debt. We're not looking to get into debt. Debt is harder, for sure. So, yep. No, I mean, so that's fair, and I've worked in both of those scenarios: youth director, youth pastor, went to Bible college, all that. I think our thought is to do a couple of things. Some of this work will be done in the aggregate. I think the time of Mountain View Church doing everything kind of on their, we need to utilize Youth for Christ and work in a synergy with them, as well as other churches. There's more openness for that, so that's a good thing. However we title the role, that role will be focused in on middle and high school under Diana's direction. We need that. Her stability is going to be huge for that role. Because if you drop, say, for example, even me as a college-trained youth pastor at 24, 23 into that position, usually not very organized person, Also, a person that does not know the community or our church, it takes a longer time for them to get planted in. It's better to have a staff person over that to help them and facilitate them. And she's doing that in embryonic form with Stuart. So yeah, our goal would be to have somebody who's a solid 20 hours a week in that role, with Youth for Christ, for example, if that happens, working those overlaps and those synergies, and then, Lord willing, again, grow them in that role. They might get married. I'm thinking of an Evan. Part of the reason he moved away is because he was getting married, but also he was looking for education. We'd like to solve some of those problems. That's why you have a bigger unit where you could move that person into that bigger unit, for example. So the role would grow with the person, again, contingent on the fact that we grow as well, because a staff salary, let's say a person further on in their career, is 80 grand for sure. We don't have that money. For a full-on 40 hours a week with staff housing, that's a big chunk. But I like to grow toward things. But whether we call it a youth pastor, youth director, I'm trying not to pigeonhole everything so that later on it's like, but you said, well, we're going to try to get the best outcome we can for the reasonable budget that we can afford, and then to build into those people. And I think we can. Like, there's education here. There's more of a, like, we're getting, I don't know, for whatever reason, we got young guys. We don't have any young women. It's not our thing. I don't know what's going on. We got a ton of young guys, so there's more of a community of people, and this would almost certainly be a guy. So Evan is an example which helps roll around. He could be developed. This would be the opportunity. Anything else? We got lots of stuff. Mud problems in the house, that's the question. No is the answer.
Yeah, Paul, that is in a 100-year flood area right there, just a like a 2 or 3 block area on Bennett. There's a draw that comes down. It is in a map floodplain, but it's not like a river type floodplain. It's more of a debris flow type floodplain, or not a floodplain, but a hazard area. So it's not like, you know, if the river rises to a certain elevation, you're going to get wet. It's more like, okay, if you get rain up here, there's potential for it to come down, but. Yeah, and that mapping was effective, and I think it's effective in 1994, so it's relatively old mapping. It might change. A lot of those areas change when areas get remapped and new maps come out and become effective. I haven't looked into that, Ken. I don't know that type of flood insurance applies to Zone A. That's not really my. So. Okay. So the question is, will we have flood insurance? Jim has it because the mortgage insurance required, or the mortgage company required it. I mean, obviously it's something we'd have to look into. Right. Yeah. It might be prudent. You know, we'll have to look at the cost too. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There was a radon test, and it was passing. There's also a radon system that's been installed. I don't know if that was installed before Jim bought it, but yeah, there was a radon test done, and it's fine.
Rental income. Similar to the way that we don't pay tax on Roca's income that they pay for using this space, as long for a church as it's not a majority of your revenue, should be from donations, it's non-taxable. But property tax, yes, as long as it's used for rental revenue, for sure. So, yep. Okay, and Converge's accountant, that's what they specialize in, so we went right to them for sure. And Jim can probably answer questions too as our tax assessor. So if you have questions about why your taxes are going up, you could totally talk to Jim. He's the one who okays everything. Mostly his idea. I'm just kidding. Anything else? Just, again, you're asking great questions.
So basically how it's going to work now is you're going to vote, put your ballots in the box. Graham's going to close us in prayer. We need one person from the congregation to help our counters. So we got one? Okay. Okay, we got one over there? Okay. We need a volunteer from the congregation, not a staff member. Okay. All right, Angie. All right, so you'll join Mary Jean and the two elders, Chris and Graham. What's that? Just pick them up, Graham. Pick up ballots, okay. And I'll close this in prayer. Father, thank you for the time that we spent today hashing through this decision. Father, we pray that your will be done, that we can move forward in this valley for your kingdom, for our kids. Father, such a blessing to be around for kids in this valley. So praise you, Jesus. In your name we pray. Amen.